And anytime you want to stop or anything, I mean, we're not. This is not going out on the radio or anything like that.
Is that sharp enough to pick us both up?
That'll pick everything. Your life and your career has been not like a soap opera, but a mini series. There's been a lot of things happen to you. Do you ever reflect on it? Does it make you crazy at all?
I'm going to say that's why I've never been able to call it a career, more or less, because it's always been so erratic, the stops and starts. Except, I know of late, maybe I've sort of, because like I've, maybe not too many people in the States I've done TV appearances and stuff, but I haven't toured the States for like 4 years. So I want to have a crack at that next year.
Yeah. Why, if you could sum it up and say it's been erratic, why has it been erratic? I mean, self-destructive or anything like that?
I don't know, because like of late I've been doing things involved with the 60s, Joe. We did that thing for HBO.
Yeah. Oh yes, the Bill Graham thing, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't too crazy when I saw that, but I don't know, I mean, just going back to then, and like, apart from it being the 60s, when I first started in the States, right, with Dee Anthony managing me and the Grease Band, and like those first 2 tours we did were like, I mean, I forget, even then when you think about the money, we sort of got something like $2,000 a night, right, and even, I mean, it was quite amazing that, you didn't make any money off those tours, but they were an introduction to America, which was incredible for us. And God, I mean, it was like, I mean, I remember being with Chris Stainton, who Chris is with Eric now. I think Eric Clapton, if he hasn't left, he might have left Eric by now.
Yeah. Eric has a new album coming out.
And I think, right, so I don't think Chris is on it because Phil Collins and Tom Dowd, right?
Have you lost touch with Chris?
I'm afraid so, but we talked earlier this year about writing again. And because he's one friend, and we were really a good partnership, But like it's one of those things you mention to the record company and they don't particularly leap up and down. But I'd like to get with him and try and do something again because, he was with me on the Mad Dogs thing, which was like the follow-up of the Grease Band tours, into 1970. And I was saying with, that's just, I don't forget, just when I was reflecting the other day about it, when people keep asking me, that was sold a lot of records and, I mean, I seem to harp on this stuff when I talk about it, Joe, about having come out from that time with no money, but it doesn't really bother me, it was, because it didn't bother me then, right? It was like I'm more, having to pay for like having a house now or something, as you say, like a lot of us have to work, right? But, I was just so, we're all into that thing of, it was like a crime to have whereas like rock and roll stars these days seem to groom themselves right into it all, the clothes and we were on this trip of stripping off our worldly goods or something, I don't know. And it never quite happened, yes. And we were giving it away to all these other people, my God.
That's how we were.
Yes, yeah.
Well, when you started, you were a working guy and you didn't have any money.
Really.
So success had to be wild for you anyhow.
I remember giving money to various people, like, I give them like 70,000 here and 40 there to people who wanted houses who I'd known for years and just said if you ever make it back, pay me back, because I never heard from them. And but then about 5 years after all that, the tax people came up demanding all that money that I thought you could just go around giving away, like a magic Christian. But so I've learned a few things on that side.
You were a blues music fan, weren't you? The Muddy Waters and,
really.
People like that. Where did you hear it? Was there a lot of it on the radio in England? Or?
It wasn't particularly, because the initial rush of like people like Eddie Cochran, of course, Gene Vincent. I mean, Donegan, right, I've seen Paul McCartney talking about how much he meant to us in England, Lonnie, right, and the Vipers. Yeah, I remember like my brother, because, he was a little older than me and they sort of like turned on Lonnie after they thought he'd sold out. He did Putting on the Agony or whatever, Putting on the Star.
Bedpost overnight, chewing gum.
Right, so, but the Vipers, they all loved him. So, you'd read this sort of label of like Maceo Merriweather and a few odd characters. So it was more or less with me, there was an import store in Sheffield, just the one that I used to finally found, and used to go through their catalogues and just started, because they were expensive things to buy, they were like £4.50 then, which is like, I don't know, about $15, $20 now, right? So it was like, you know, to buy a couple a week was a chunk out of my money, being a gas fitter and all that. But I mean, then I got found Lightning Hopkins, and, you know, because Ray, you know, I picked up everything I could on Ray Charles. And, but, you know, after Ray, I started getting into, you know, I had a band, and we called ourselves Joe Cocker's Big Blues, and, you know, we were very, you know, everyone got a bit on that purist trip. We would do nothing but 12 bars, you know, it was like, which we didn't work very often for that reason, because nobody wanted, you know.
Nobody wanted the real blues stuff.
But we were quite good at it for a while. Then I realised it was, you know, it's phony to be trying to be a black, you know, guy from Chicago as, you
Was
know,
this
even
before
though.
the Stones broke through?
Well, no, I think by then the Stones had, you know, in fact, you know, they were sort of, but that's probably why we were all on this northern purist trip, you know, because seeing them having got commercialised as they went along, you know.
Well, it was an amazing thing for all of us here in the States in the music business was that English musicians had picked up blues artists who really never were that popular here in this country, who never had widespread popularity. Muddy Waters, or
Howlin' Wolf,
Walter, Howlin' Wolf,
really,
Jimmy Reed. Those people. And they took that music and came right back at us, white kids singing.
Yeah.
And it was a smash here. You guys, all our groups turned around because we were the Beach Boys. We were something else here. We weren't doing that stuff at all.
Right, really. Well, I mean, the Beatles were sort of like something that sort of mellowed in between it, right?
Yeah,
Because they did a bit of rock as well, but, right, so until it moved on a bit further, you know, God, but that.
Did you always flap around when you sang? When did you start becoming a singer, and when did you develop those mannerisms?
Well, I was a drummer, right, originally. And although I never really had a proper kit, I never had a foot pedal, which always used to. Well, no, wait a minute, I had the foot pedal, I never had the hi-hat, that was it, Joe. So I never got into that. So I didn't really think I was that good. But trying to sing and drum was always difficult because you got a mic. You know, these days you can use boom kind of things, but. And we had, I remember, you know, the band saying, well, we got to do one or another, Joe, and we prefer you drumming, that we couldn't find another drummer. So we got this horrible kid singer. That's when I was Vance Arnold in the Avengers, right? And we were playing the pubs, which were great, you know, great upbringing, really, because it was such a comfortable life that we led in some ways, that we would go to these pubs each night, which were only like at the most an hour's drive after you'd done a day job. And then you drink a lot of beer and just play 8 till 8:30, 9 to 9:30, 10 to 10:30, and then the pub's closed, right? So it was like we'd do that 5 or 6 nights a week, and maybe pick up £2 or £3 each for it, you know. So it kept you in beer money as well, you know. So it was just like you know, we weren't really in that big a hurry to get successful at that time.
Did you know that's what you wanted to do then? I mean, did it turn you on, singing and playing in front of people?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a driving. You know, I mean, I knew I would never, as far as being a gas fitter, you could sort of rise above that, but music was such a dominating thing to me that, you know, I had a record deal in '64 when they came scouting, you know, after the Beatle rush and all that. They came up north. Yeah, and they, you know, the band then was Vance Arnold, the Avengers, and they said, we don't like the band, you know, as usual, and I did an orchestrated version of Georgia on My Mind, which they never released, and instead, you know, I remember Dick Rowe again was the big culprit. He didn't like it. Mike Leander produced it and thought it was a genius product, you know. It was like, he got a huge string orchestra, and there was Jimmy Page and Albert Lee. So I've never heard that record since. Yeah. And they just had me, you know, go in and do a cover of Al Kreinstead, the Beatles tune.
Oh, no kidding, kid.
Which died at death, and of course I was still living at home, and to my parents it was like, well, that's it, you've had your shot at making it, you know. Now grow up and go back and get a proper job and
be a gas fitter.
So I, you know, I mean, I was, because my elder brother Victor, he turned out to be an economist and do really well, you know. So on the straighter side of life.
Was there anybody in your neighborhood that had made it in the English pop scene at all?
Dave Berry, perhaps, from Sheffield, right?
So
he had modest kind of hits in England, right? So at that time.
And then what was the time? There was a time frame, and then all of a sudden Denny Cordell.
Yes, more or less, because, well, I mean, you know, I'd never smoked pot or anything, Joe, till about, I was a very late sort of bloomer in that, sort of made up for it after. But, you know, I mean, it was about 67 when I, you know, because I'd always sworn I was a beer drinker to the end, and remember we turned onto some Black Hash, and it, like musically speaking, it was like such an opening to your ears and senses. Like, I mean, it was like, back in the north. I mean, all of England then, for anyone to smoke, it was very much a musician's thing. And I remember like when I got popped there, busted in '68, which was, I think, after John Lennon had been done. So but it was still quite a sensation to find yourself on the front of the evening news, as if you'd,
Was that in England or here?
In England.
In England.
I mean, almost like the fuss they made over Boy George. It was that kind of thing of they're making of heroin now that smoking a joint was then, really.
And Denny Cordell came into your life?
Yeah, Chris and I made some demos.
Chris was from where?
He was from the opposite side of town.
I see, so that was a boyhood friendship.
Well, we'd known each other in other bands for years, but when we got together, we realised that, we were living in a different, I'm saying that smoking period and digging like Sergeant Pepper, as so many people do that stuff, that we tried writing in that vein. And wrote to Denny, and he came up to Sheffield, and he was really knocked out, again, he didn't like the band too much, so we more or less went in and did that first album, Little Help from My Friends, with a lot of guests, and
Had you been
I still think it's one of the best records I did.
Little Help from My Friends?
Yeah.
Well, a classic. The record's a classic. Whose idea was to do it at that tempo?
I meant the album.
Oh, the whole album? Yeah.
Yes.
And the sound. Whose idea was to do the song in that tempo?
Mine, actually, was because, again, the digging Ray Charles and the waltz, right, the 3/4, and I came up with an arrangement for Bye Bye Blackbird for some odd reason, and then that was like a follow-up to that, really.
And now success hit. What was happening to you when this record hit and you became a star in England and in the States?
Well, even so, I mean, if you remember, England was a pretty limited place to play, and we did Little Help made a #1 spot there. We're on top of the Pops and all that. So we did a tour with the Faces and the Who and various other people, like way down the bottom of the bill and stuff. And we really weren't sort of doing, I don't think we even had a follow-up out. We were ages getting a follow-up out to it. And that was when Dee Anthony came to the Marquee in London and said, got to take you guys to the States. We just put the Grease Band together.
Grease Band was an amazing band, wasn't it? Where did you find all these players?
Basically, getting to London and auditioning, like Bruce, the drummer, Bruce Rowlands, he'd been in the Royal Fusilier Guards or something, and this very immaculate time. And Henry McCullough, the Irishman, was, he'd been with all these folk groups, really. I mean, Alan Spencer, bass. I mean, they were a beautiful set of cats, but it was just our egos and that. I mean, everyone used to get, it seemed, so many bands just took it that far, and then just, I don't know, just the touring of the States and all that.
And what was the experience touring the States? Do you remember that first?
Those early tours were the greatest. I mean, so we just hovered around, like I'm saying, we would, just play 2 nights a week perhaps, which was, if you're in Midwest or somewhere, we used to get terribly, bored and just, I don't know, maybe because we wrote a few songs then, so maybe it was a good thing that, that we did get a bit fed up. But we played some great gigs too.
What do you remember some of the gigs that were?
Well, like the Atlanta Race Stadium, which was, I remember Spirit, and I remember us being bumped back, as Janis Joplin and Hendrix and everyone arrived. They would, as each of them got there, saying, "We ain't going on at 1 a.m, no way," So we'd be asking what time we were on, and it was like we start off at 9, then it's 10. I remember going on about 6 a.m, but just all these kids acid blazed and stuff, but very, just a very warm occasion. And the hotel too. I mean, going in Atlanta there was a fire in there sometime. One of the floors caught on fire. Just, like 4 days wait for room service. But just great times. I mean, the hippie times, weren't they?
When did you meet up with Leon Russell, and how did that happen?
That was, again, just partly why I broke up the Grease Band, because
Why did you break up that band too?
Well, that was after we'd done the tour, which, ended with Woodstock, which was quite a peak, so we just sort of laid low for a bit. And I wanted to do something a little different, but then, the album Accept No Substitute with Bonnie and Delaney?
Yes.
And I heard Leon, and, I thought, Chris he'd played piano for a long time, he wanted to play bass again. So we figured we could mold the band around and get get Leon via Denny to play piano, but Leon had other ideas, right? So I was just so keen on doing something with him, and that's when he just said, you know, I forget how, you know, we didn't actually say that's it with the Grease Band. We just sort of, I went on to do this other thing, and we never picked up the threads. But that's when Leon sort of said, well, let me put a band together, and came up with, you know, the Mad Dogs concept.
You were pretty much in control of yourself at that point?
I was, but I mean, again, we were all going through, I mean, we'd all lived up at Leon's house, all running around in the nude, and, you know, it was like pretty wild times, like, you know, I mean...
the perception of Joe Cocker was always, you know, the wacko guys, you know, whacked out and,
yeah,
and very eccentric and unpredictable.
Maybe that was, you know, it's a bit sad that made such a dent in people's minds, Joe, because it's one element of everybody. If you get,
well,
you know,
what happened with you is that when you got on stage, you looked strange too, and that added to an image of, wow, you know, this guy is dangerous. You know.
I know. I did, you know, David Letterman's show the other day, and they're still going on about me being spastic and stuff. It's like I can't talk about anything else when I go on those shows.
Well, of course, the Belushi incident propagated it and perpetuated
it.
It
was great impersonation.
You know, for whatever the negatives are, dwelling on it, I don't think anybody who's been around for the last 20 years will ever forget you and John Belushi, or Belushi doing you, or you know, it's one of the classic pieces of comedy. You know,
really?
Ever, you know, and you're memorialized with it, whatever, you know, good or bad, but it's not bad because it is a terrific piece of work, you know, but Belushi used to do it, and then I remember the two of you.
Yeah. Do you know Geordie Hormel?
Yes, sure.
Right, the village recorder, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember, like, I was working there, and on the, you know, about the time of You Are So Beautiful, that track, and Geordie coming in and saying, Joe, I've got this video to show you that, but you're not going to like it at all. I'm going, well, and at that time, you know, I don't know how long Saturday Night Live had been showing, but I didn't watch much TV then, and I hadn't even seen the show. So we all went with like a bunch of his friends, and he showed the thing of Belushi and all the pouring the beer. I mean, I was so flipped, and I thought it was like that he would actually use my vocal track, and you know, it was so on, like, and of course I was like in hysterics, and everyone else was saying, Joe, you're not supposed to find this amusing. You know, it's just, you know, they were all really thought it was gross and like offensive, you know. And I said, come on, you can't not laugh at that. And I didn't even know who Belushi was. Right?
Do you still move around a lot on stage? I mean, is it just, that's a mannerism of yours, like a Sinatra with a left hand, or?
Yeah, it's virtually subconscious with me, you know. Because a lot of the time I'm more or less sort of conducting the band, you know, just keeping a feel. And so it's like... you know, I really sort of don't, you know, I mean, I don't know, Joe, it's just one of those things, it's mine.
And then you did the Mad Dogs and Englishmen, which the tour and the album was a milestone. That was, did a video, didn't they?
Well, they had a movie of it, MGM, right, yeah.
Do you remember much about that tour?
Yes, I mean, it was, you know, I remember us rehearsing down at A&M, and, you know, like it was strange, you know, the whole thing of getting like a family together, you know, I mean, they were mostly Leon's family. Me and Chris, I think, were the only English guys in that package. But I mean, it was, I watched the film the other day, which upset me because of all the hair I used to have, you know. But apart from that, no, there were some humorous things in it. And it, you know, it was like strange that Leon would almost be into this revivalist kind of thing, where he would always have a meal before the show, where we'd all sit down and eat you know, and he'd say some little prayer and all this, you know. But we had some good gigs out of it. But at the end of it, I mean, Joe, I mean, it was a pretty grueling one. I forget how many dates it was. But like, I was on a weird trip then where I used to think like, my health, you know, I think most kids do when you're in your early 20s, you know, you feel like Superman, and I thought nothing would ever get me down. I could sort of do anything and everything, you know.
A lot of drugs and alcohol.
Well, I wasn't I don't know. It was just, I mean, like going on stage and just singing till I was absolutely hoarse, you know, each night, which I still feel you know, hurt my voice somewhere down the track in certain ranges, you know, there's a falsetto I can't hit. that was, you know, I just sort of think I could never get ill or anything, you know.
Sure.
So by the time that tour ended up, I was in pretty rough shape. I lost a lot of weight, you know, through just not eating at all. And I don't know, I went back to England pretty miserable because it just seemed like I'd walked into a cul-de-sac. I started to explain, like, Leon didn't want to take it any further than that. And it was like all these, you know, Chris found a, you know, American girlfriend while we were on that tour and fell heavily in love with her. And, you know, we'd been almost like side buddies before that. There'd never been anybody there between us, you know. So he went his way, and I felt like left on the dock, you know.
It was kind of a cloud over that tour. And, you know, I mean, really, really bad, but you were drained.
Yeah.
You and Chris divided a little bit there, and then nothing happened for you for a while.
Right, I just went back to England, and, you know, I mean, I never even bothered asking how the record had done. I mean, that's how vague for some reason in those days, you know, I never used to watch the progress. I mean, I get by Billboard these days, but I mean, in those days, I never even dreamt of looking at a magazine much on, you know, on keeping a check on how it was doing. So it was like after that, I went back and rented a van and drove around England for like, you know, I would go and stay with my folks, or rent, you know, stay in a hotel in London, or, you know, I just knew I could always go to the accountant and get some cash, right? But even though I didn't know how much money I got or what, but, and then after that, it was when that also brought me up to 73, I think, right?
Yeah, that you were up to 73. You did an album in 72, and but you didn't really have a hit again until You Are So Beautiful.
Which was 74.
74.
Yeah, and that's when Jim Price came around the door. When I got he was a girlfriend of mine, had a flat in Shepherd's Bush, London. So then I went back into the drug world a bit there, where I did heroin for a time, you know, snorted that, and, you know, but I mean, anyway, at least I always got myself through those things. I realised what a dead end that was pretty quick. And Jim came around the house and sort of got me rekindled on that one, because you know, he came in and said, "Are you interested in making a record?" I said, "No." I don't know, just didn't know where I was really. And he said, "Well, have a listen to this," and he played me You Are So Beautiful, you know. And I really thought it was, you know, spot on. And then he came around a day later and brought me another song that he'd written, and he sort of slowly got me interested. And then we went cavorting all over the place doing that record, and like went to New South Wales in England, then off to Jamaica. I mean, all over the place.
Any reason?
I don't know. We were all a bit, you know. Jim's a wacko. Well, he was then. He was a really wacko guy. And
during that period before Jim came along, that had to be the real low point for you, didn't it? I mean, you weren't doing the thing that you loved to do, and you had no...
Yeah, Joe. But it was odd to... At the same time, it was like... It wasn't that I ever just, you know, didn't like music in my life, you know, but it was like just some real... I said I felt like I'd walked to this... You know, we really felt we were going somewhere, and then when that whole thing stopped, it was just like... I didn't know what, you know. So I just figured I didn't want to listen, or I didn't want to be involved around music till it sort of wore off. It was strange.
And then you came back, you did that record.
Yeah.
And what happened with You Are So Beautiful? Did you tour again, or?
No, we had one, I don't know if you remember it, one sort of really fateful night that I don't think did me much good at all. Was after we finished that album, Jim booked the Roxy in LA. And they had all the reps, you know, I'm sure Jerry was there and all those people. And I went out, and I know somebody should have kept an eye on me, but some dealer found me backstage and filled me up with cocaine, and I sort of drank, you know, having not performed live for a couple of years or something. I drank a whole bottle of brandy and went out there, and I got through about 2 numbers, and I just sat down on the stage I remember having a total mental block to all the words, and it was rather embarrassing. They closed the curtain, everyone said good night. So that kind of done me a lot of good as far as a return to but no one's ever really mentioned that in a long time.
I remember when we were talking about signing you, you know, we were going to take you like an athlete and put you through a physical exam, stuff like that, to make sure you could get up there and work again. You know.
Oh God.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think, Joe, from that there was the other album that A&M put out, because they weren't really, you know, I even don't think that, in honesty, the time when I was with with Warner's at that time, I still wasn't really
No.
back in.
They put a
form.
Stingray album out.
Yeah, which that's probably the least selling album I ever had, I
It
think.
wasn't much. It got to number 70 or something like that in the charts.
Mhm.
And then they did a greatest hits album in '77.
Yeah.
But you still weren't together when we signed you, because I know I go on
Right.
the road and
I was trying to get out of it,
Yeah.
but it was, you know, I mean, you see, I still drink a bit now,
Yeah.
but it's not as it used to be. Like, I don't know, it seems to happen to a lot of people who, when they've been onto heavier kind of drug, if they have anything to bounce off on, it always seems to be alcohol, you know.
Yeah.
And, but that was just, you know, I mean, it's so easy to get into, and it's amazing how people around you just don't let you know just how gone you are, you know. But like, I mean, Michael was managing me then, right? Or he just started to. So I'm grateful to him in some respects of, you know, we have our arguments even now about things that, you know, I just don't think he's very articulate about some things, you know. But, and even so, that was like a mismarriage of ideas and stuff. You know, I find even now, if you don't really know what you want to go in the studio with, people are obviously going to try and tell you what to go in with, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The album you did for us wasn't a great album.
No.
It was all over the place, it seemed to me.
well, I mean, with Alan and all that, Alan Toussaint, I mean,
Yes,
we went zooming around all over the place there and raising incredible bills, just,
Yeah.
you know,
It was
for
not a
unused
terrific
work.
time. It was not a terrific time.
No.
I still have the jacket.
Oh, yeah.
We put out jackets, luxury you can afford.
Oh, yes.
That year we could afford it. The Eagles were making albums.
Oh, yes,
They were
right,
that at
yeah.
the time. What did it take to get your act together here? What was the motivation?
I don't know, nothing sort of that dramatic. I mean, during this time I met Pam, right?
Yeah.
And so we've only been together for the last 4 years, I think, but I've known her all that time before. And so she became a bit more of a steadying influence. Moving here actually was, because living in LA, I mean, I was living in LA around the time of that I was recording that album, and we were in Woodland Hills, and I wasn't very happy. It was a real tiny little house. We had no, you know, I was practically broke, you know, before doing all that. And I know it just seemed to take a long time to come through it, and just the crazy lifestyle that I used to attract in LA, of, you know, people just hanging around all hours of the day, and it worked when I came here. You know, I realised that there was sort of hangers-on. It was just the first while they drove all the way up here, and then they just gradually drizzled away. You know, yeah. Well, they should have seen the one I lived in before. It was even more scary. So I mean, it was. But I just fell in love with the.
Who took a chance with you to make a record again when you did the song from the picture? Who called you to do that?
Well, that actually was. I'd already done a record with Capitol before then, right?
Oh, you had done, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how many have I done with him. Civilized Man. Oh no, I had the one record. Sorry, Joe, we're
One
missing
record.
out
Just one
important part. Right, Sheffield Steel,
That's it, yeah.
which is with Island Records,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Well, that was Chris Blackwell.
Yeah.
You know Chris, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And I know we got along quite well. I mean, you know, that album didn't do that well either, but
And that was done in 1982, yeah. Between the Asylum record and the record you did for Elektra and the record you did for Island, you didn't make any records.
right.
Yeah. And then who called you to do this song that won the...
Well, I've just been finding out Michael, because, you know, I've been telling people for ages. I got it from Stuart Levine, but he says that he initially found because I think he got it from Buffy St. Marie, and then Will Jennings wrote a part. It was like Jack Nishi, Will Jennings, and Buffy. So it was more or less, there was like a middle eight that Jack had written, a verse part that Buffy had written, and then Will came and wrote that other little thing.
And who was it that decided that you two should sing it?
Well, I mean, I'll give Stuart Levine the credit for that, because he was, you know, Jennifer went about telling everyone that it was her idea, and Stuart get real annoyed, saying, "Come on, man!" I remember clearly, you know, that he could hear me doing it, and then he said, you know, because I went in that night and sang the whole song as a, you know, just one delivery, you know, as it not being a duet, just a straight song. Then when Jennifer came in and we started mixing you know, she sang the whole song, and then we sort of started splicing it up. So it was Stuart's, you know, idea. It was, I don't know, it's strange that when I was talking to some people in Australia, you know, as we were going down there, saying, Joe, you know, you've lost a few fans through doing that movie ballad, because I've not been there for a couple of years. And I thought, I hope not, because, you know, I thought you know,
So they think because you did that kind of song?
that it's a bit, that it's a bit too sad or sweet. I hope not. I think it's a good song in its own way.
What happened to your career after that?
Well, I mean, you know, I really didn't expect. I mean, it's very hard, right, Joe, to tour the States. That's what I found then. I mean, I kept touring, you know, across Europe and America, just paying the rent. And like in the States, you find yourself, the only thing you can do is, like, if you're not playing like concert halls or whatever, would be the bar circuit, which didn't make much money at all, right? And it was a lot of hard work. So we did, in that 81 year, 81, 82, I did a lot of bar dates around the States, you know, which I didn't like much at all. But we're talking about now Sheffield Steel.
Yeah, Sheffield Steel, and then after you won the awards and after you made the hit record with your career.
It really didn't make that big a job, no. I mean...
Why do you think?
I don't know, because maybe it wasn't a one-off, it was a movie-oriented song, you know. Yeah. And we never sort of had it wasn't like we got an album out that, you know, that featured it or anything. So, I don't know, it's been a slow, you know, I've just been trying to move along without doing anything erratic, you know, late.
Yeah, no more nights of relaxing. Do you love it still, the music? Does it still mean...
I've almost gotten to the point, I mean, you know, I think I'm even scaring my band now when we go out, because I used to always be like the guy in the bar till 3 in the morning, and, you know, and these days, I mean, I get more into the performance than I used to, you know, a few years back when I, you know, would be overconfident or whatever, you know, because it's strange over the years. I've heard it's like all singers, that when you refuse to believe you ever sing out of tune or something. And this friend, like, I remember about 4 years ago, playing me this old Australian tape, which horrified me that I could ever sound so bad live, you know. And it was when I'd been drinking heavy and, you know, would go out and sing. So these days I wouldn't dare, Joe. I mean, I'll drink a couple of beers, because you know, it's like it goes down well on stage, you know. But like, I could never drink spirits or wine or anything before, because I never realised how it affects your pitch, you know, it really does.
You know, there's a whole field now of...
From people from, like, you know, I went to this, you know, it's the worst feeling in the world is to lose your voice before a concert, and there's only been a few where it's really affected my band. I remember 2 years back we were in Germany, we were doing this show for like 90,000 people, it's televised all across Europe, and that morning I got up and I was like, hello, and everyone thought, oh God, no gig tonight. So I go along to this doctor, and what is that drug now that they, you know, good Lord.
They spray it?
No, well, no. He actually gave me a shot.
Yeah.
And it's the one where they always talk about you getting, you know, turning into a woman if you have it done.
Yeah.
I'll try and remember the name. Well, no, but I mean, Joe, I'm trying to remember the actual name of the thing. I usually can remember it. But the guy, you know, he just said, don't smoke another cigarette. And like, we were on it at 6 that afternoon, and it was like about 12 noon. And he gave me this, well, I found out later it was quite a big dose of this stuff. And I remember, you know, the band all being real apprehensive and saying, do you want to practice a bit, Joe, to see if you got any voice? And I said, just let me get out there and hope. And I went out and just opened my mouth, and I couldn't believe it, because I'd had bad throats like that before and been out and had a real hard time. But I sang like a bird. I was scared that all this power that came. So I can realise why people get scared of drugs, you know. I mean,
did you ever do anything on a regular basis to take care of your voice?
Before you leave, I'll remember the name of that drug.
To take care of your voice, did you ever, the way you sang and the way you worked it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I don't smoke as many cigs when I tour now, you know, but I still do smoke a few, and it's not good for you, but I don't know, it's hard for me to quit. But what was it, your direct question?
We were just talking about, did you take care of your voice? Did you ever, or did you just go out and use it?
I've got a method of singing that, that's why the more, you know, when I do tour more, you find yourself in a place where you don't do those silly things. Yeah. I mean, I went in and did a track, and we were only like a week and a half off the road, and I'd already forgotten what I learned, you know, that thing you learn every night, where maybe that's because you do the songs you're pretty familiar with. Yeah. But then this was a brand new song, so I blew my voice in a night and a half, you know. But like when we get on the road, I get into this thing where you know, like, I don't know, it's a different approach, I suppose, to opera singers, but it's still the same, that breathing through the diaphragm and rather than, you know, singing to the throat box, which is just an art, something you learn over the years.
And you got to rest it. I mean, Neil Diamond was saying that it's like your body. It tells you, take it easy today, you know, and don't do anything today.
Well, I'm going to say after so many, you know, if you're on the road for 2 months, and you know, people are trying to start booking and recording dates for me and saying you'll be in great form after, you know, but then if the ideal thing is to have a week off when you've done a bit of work and then just go in, because, you know, I mean, I find I hate mixing recording and touring, you know, two different worlds for a start.
Are you getting a kick out of making records now? Is it fun?
This next one, because it seems, you know, I mean, the way Capitol did get behind us on the last one, I mean, and saying, doing well in Europe with the thing, you know, with like, You Can Leave Your Hat On, did #1 in Italy and all that. So, I mean, it's made me look forward to, you know, doing a good new record, but now I've got that problem, which I've had for some time, having not written anything, of researching material. So like a lot of it I get from Capitol and Don Grierson. So I'm you know, I mean, he just sent me some good ideas and stuff, but I'm trying to make sure that it becomes something I want to put out, you know.
When you look back on it, the years up to now, anyhow, what was the best time for you? Was there a time when it was terrific that you recall?
See, I really don't, I'm not the regretting kind of guy, so, I mean, apart from those times when I'm, you know, the bleak period, which has been and gone and been and gone, apart from those times, Joe, when I've been out there and I've been feeling physically good and enjoying it, maybe those late 60s and, you know, and the early part of the 70s up until the Mad Dogs thing were the most exciting because of just that youthful element and a world of change I don't think even kids see now that we went through then. Right. I mean,
some people regard you as a casualty somewhere along the way. Do you agree with that, or do you...
Well, I mean, I'm kind of coming up with I got called a fossil the other day.
Well, that's unfair, but the feeling was that you just...
You see that picture from a German magazine?
Rod. You and Rod.
We did a couple of gigs together, right?
I think it looks much like you. I don't think it looks like either one of you, other than Rod's hair there. I don't know. But
yeah, dinosaurs or no, but that thing of the survivor and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't know. Do you? Because it's sort of like, you know, when I think of some of the musicians I've known who are dead and stuff. I mean, a lot of people come up with that morbid fascination, saying, you know, we used to have a poll, and when you go to Europe and stuff, saying that who was the most likely to die next, and you were way up there, you know, and going, really, you're saying Eric Clapton was up there. The guys were giving this list of all the, next potential dead candidate, but I mean, life's an experience anyway, and so there's obviously, I wouldn't say I've mellowed now, but I mean, just having the responsibility of like a house, and I mean, I'd get to do a bit of gardening, same as George Harrison. Yeah. Not on an elaborate scale like his, but I can go and potter out here, and so that when we do go out on tour, I really look forward to it, So I know I'm not a survivor.
Do you ever see Cordell or hear from him at all, Denny?
Again, I saw Denny about a year back, and he talked about doing something which, when I mentioned that to Capitol, they'll go, well, where's his track record, which seems they do with a lot
He's been kind of out of it, hasn't he?
Denny,
doing anything?
Well, he went to live in Ireland, right?
He had some money, he sold some property here.
Yeah, he remarried, blonde girl, nice girl, English, and had 2 more kids, I think. And he's got, he probably made his money off Mad Dogs and Englishmen.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
It's interesting that have you done any of these nostalgia tours yet?
I really don't go for,
do those. No,
Joe,
that's
no,
understandable. But you should be doing tours like maybe Chuck Berry, who makes more money now than he ever made before.
Really?
He's up to 20,000 a night.
But when you hear all the funny stories about Chuck, just walking in and picking up two grand and then walking out the door without, I've heard some remarkable Chuck Berry
Yeah,
stories.
he's very strange. But a lot of those
Yeah,
people, Fats Domino's making a ton of money now,
Uh-huh.
compared to what he
I heard.
what he was stolen from.
Really, which is. But I mean, you'd imagine that we'd have had a bit more sense than the 50s. It was such a brand new thing, right?
Yeah, well, they didn't
So,
know nothing. At
yeah,
least you
really.
worked for a record company in the 60s, it was honest.
Yeah.
And you got paid your money, or Denny got paid his money.
Yeah, I mean, there was, you could show where it had gone.
Yeah,
Anyway,
if it ever
yeah,
flowed through, I don't know, but the money got paid out of A&M for sure.
yeah. Now, a couple of times, there was a manager I had, because I'm forgetting about that. Chris and I had a band that was called the old Chris Stainton All Stars, and when we had the record Woman to Woman, do you remember that
Oh,
one?
that was way back. wasn't
Yeah,
it?
so that was like 71,
Yeah.
which was, I'm going to say I knew there was a bit more than that going on between, that was like 71, 72, I think.
72, I remember High Time we went, and
There we go,
All
that-
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Midnight Rider you did in 72 too, with the Chris Stainton band. Yeah.
There we go, yes.
Yeah,
So,
Midnight Rider, yeah.
and we went all around the world with that tour too, which was another.
Well, what's Chris been doing in the last 10 years? Has he been clapping all the time?
No, I'm going to say, I'm trying to think, after we probably, you're right, it's been a long time, because I think he worked with Leo Sayer, and he's just potted around with different bands, I think, yeah.
Well, we're all around the music, and it's hard to leave it. It's hard to go to do something else. And,
Yeah, Joe. I've been saying that, about the only other thing I would do now is probably open a pub or something, which would be nice in a place like this, because, serve some English food and make it look pretty authentic. I don't mean one of those a really class kind of pub, those, have you been to those pubs in England which are really nice as well
would
as
you like
being,
to do something like that?
Yeah, I thought it'd be a nice sort of, if I ever get, fed up of touring,
Yeah.
I can always build a concert room and then put my own gig on once a week. So.
Video it.
Yes, there you go.
Video it. Well, it's terrific seeing you again, I must tell you.
Do you want to stay for some food?
No, I'm
Really?
supposed to get back in town tonight.
Yeah.
And I thank you.
I'm sorry, because normally, Joe, I would have come up, to LA and done it